Okay, so if you watch the opening cinematic of WoW's latest expansion, as every nerd is one to do as often as possible between the BlizzCon announcement and the release date, you see a cutscene where Discount Fabio is writing a letter to the priest from Hearthstone and is on his treasure planet boat flying alongside the good guys, while they both assault the Broken Isles. Now, for the most part, this just looks like another kick-ass Blizzard cinematic, but the cool thing that they did a little different for this expansion is that as soon as you finish the opening cinematic and log into the actual game, the first thing your character does is go in and join the battle that started in the cinematic. And once you finish the little scenario, you're gifted with an in-game cutscene where Varian Wrynn, the former raid boss of Stormwind, dies. And honestly, I really enjoyed it. I thought it sounded awesome. But there's one little thing that bothered me. Okay, so check it out. In this cutscene, there's a really critical point where Yasuo hands retired Jacob the letter to his son, lets go of the ladder, and effectively commits to sacrificing himself to save his airship. And this is the music that they play. Now, if you don't recognize this at first, that's okay. It's probably because it's relatively new music. In fact, the only two other times you would have heard it are in the opening cinematic.
And faith to fight.
So right off the bat, the musical tone here is something gluing the events of Legion together. This is, for the most part, the primary leitmotif for the Legion expansion. And okay, it all makes sense, branding and stuff. Let's have our expansion have its own theme, or at the very least, its own sonic identity. I get it, and just to reiterate, I think it sounds awesome. And that would be fine and all, except this is what they're calling Anduin's theme. Now, I have yet to hear this music in-game and in context, probably because I explicitly play Horde and therefore know what the sun looks like, have a girlfriend, and am amazing at PvP. But herein lies one of two problems. Okay, so first, maybe this is all just coincidental, and the lead supervisors wanted a single musical idea that brought together the opening of the new expansion, which, okay, fine. But then why hasn't this leitmotif made an appearance on the Horde side of things? Which kind of leads into our next problem, where if this musical idea is supposed to represent the Legion expansion in its entirety, as implied by its usage in the opening cinematic, and Varian's sacrifice as used in the cinematic at the end of the Broken Shore scenario, and represent Anduin as the new king of Stormwind, then we've come across a very rare musical phenomenon that you can only describe as a musical spoiler. Now, it's pretty rare to find a musical spoiler out in the wild. First, the piece of media has to be put together well enough to have established musical themes and leitmotifs. Then second, the creative team has to be so enthusiastic about using these themes and leitmotifs that they then use them a little too well and give away too much information about the story. One good example from the gaming world can actually be found in The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, where if you pay super close attention, you can tell that the Ballad of the Goddess is actually Zelda's lullaby played backwards, and you can figure out that Zelda is the goddess within the first few minutes of the game. Or another example, this time from Kingdom Hearts, so you know how like Ventus is kind of like Roxas and Sora's reverse gay love baby? Or whatever the hell the story to that damn franchise has become? Well, Ventus's theme is just a combination of Roxas and Sora's themes. Or maybe the most obvious and well-known comes from the infamous Red Wedding scene in the Game of Thrones. Here we see the Mama Wolf staring at the band while they play The Reigns of Castamere, which is the theme most commonly associated with the Lannisters. Now, I don't know if this one's so much a spoiler given how much time the camera lingers on the band. They might as well have just had one of the band members look directly into the camera and say, listen, we're Team Lion, you guys are fucked. Okay, but back to our WoW example. So we now know that Anduin is going to be the main protagonist in the narrative surrounding the rest of the Legion expansion because the leitmotif for Legion is contained within Anduin's own musical theme. Or on the other hand, maybe this leitmotif doesn't necessarily represent the entirety of the Legion expansion, in which case, why would it be in the opening cinematic? And if it actually is just used like a leitmotif to represent the assault on the Broken Shore, then Varian's death scene is only used to tie Anduin to the Broken Shore without him actually being there. Either way, we're watching the musical equivalent of a girlfriend gets shoved in a refrigerator. Varian dies with no real musical identity or significance of his own, in essence making his death scene not really about him. At the very best, Varian kind of becomes the glue that musically ties Anduin to the events of the Broken Shore, which is the only way that this whole scenario doesn't become a giant musical spoiler for the rest of Legion. But the thing that really bothered me about this is that each expansion of WoW doesn't exist in its own universe, as much as people may like to believe. The Warcraft universe expands beyond just WoW. It goes all the way back to the original Warcraft in 1994. That's over 2 decades worth of musical material to call upon. See, this is a big moment in the WoW universe. The leader of a faction is dying. Or if you play on the Horde, you know, it's a Tuesday. This event isn't only significant in Legion, it doesn't just call back to all the events and influences that this character's had on the world, but it's going to evoke the impact that this character's absence is going to have on the universe as well. Okay, so what can we do? How can we musically kill a king? Well, let's think about it. Are there any musical themes out there that really represent Varian? Not really. There's the Stormwind theme, but that really represents all of the Alliance, and we're trying to just talk about Varian. Well, are there any other themes that represent maybe a monarchy in WoW? Maybe even like a coronation anthem? I can think of one called O Thanagor, which in the Alliance's language means O King. It originally showed up at the end of Warcraft 3, but most people are going to recognize this song from one of the most iconic moments in the World of Warcraft universe. So in this instance, the song has an almost dramatic irony kind of feeling to it. The song is used as if Arthas is being coronated as the new king of Lordaeron, all while Arthas' father is telling him about how great Arthas is going to be as a king. But instead, all that sentiment is warped to fit Arthas' transformation into the Lich King instead of the king of Lordaeron, which is probably why they included at least a few of these lyrics in Anduin's new theme. So here's the deal. Once Varian releases his hand from that letter, he's committing to sacrificing his life for his people. And even for those who aren't as acquainted with the World of Warcraft universe and will only recognize this song as coming from the opening to Wrath, at the very least, that forces the listener to draw a comparison between these two kings. One who would sacrifice his people for power, and another who would sacrifice himself to save his people. Check it out.
Take this to my son.
Never underestimate how powerful music can be as a narrative device. But as far as this goes, yeah, no, I'm out.